Gunnar Stockton filled in for Carson Beck in the college football playoffs, and now Carson Beck is a Miami Hurricane. The job has fallen to Gunnar Stockton to lead this Georgia Bulldogs team in 2025. Their schedule starts off very easy, going to be 2-0, 100% against Marshall and Austin, PA. No chance they lose either of those games heading into that road trip to Tennessee to start SEC play.
Marshall maybe was an interesting game originally, but after the departure of basically the entire team and the head coach, that game is without a doubt a 100% win. Now, with Tennessee, obviously the whole story here is that Nico Iamaleava is out. He is now at UCLA. And kind of funnily enough, Joey Aguilar is in from UCLA as the two just essentially switch jobs. And Tennessee lost Dylan Sampson, their starting running back from last season, and James Pierce Jr., their best defensive player. Those two key pieces, along with the departure of Jaime Lava, even though he had a decent year, but nothing too spectacular, I think really hurts Tennessee's chances at being a really competitive team, even though it is at Neyland Stadium, and that is one of the best college football environments and one of the hardest to play at. I think Gunnar Stockton's still able to get the job done here. He has experience playing against some of the better teams like Texas, like Notre Dame. I think Tennessee is going to be a relatively easy game in this situation with this current Tennessee team for the Bulldogs to get a win.
Especially because it's so early in the season. So yeah, we do like Georgia to move to 3-0 here, heading into their first bye week. And after that, a very intriguing matchup here with an Alabama team that obviously no longer has Nick Saban. They have an interesting quarterback competition going on. Most likely, Ty Simpson is going to win that starting job. This is going to be really, really interesting. Georgia has the home field advantage here, so it might seem crazy, but I'm actually leaning towards Alabama in this game.
It's kind of tough to pick between these two teams. Both are kind of in a weird situation with Alabama not really having a starting quarterback that they're 100% set on, and Georgia kind of coming off of a disappointing season by their standards, even though they did win the SEC record-wise and playoff-wise, they did not meet their expectations. And similarly, they don't really have a superstar quarterback that they're going to rely on. It's going to come down to the weapons and the defenses. Georgia's defense is good year after year, but I think Alabama's defense is going to be comparable. And Alabama is going to have the difference maker in this one because they have a kid named Ryan Williams on their team. And whoever the quarterback is for the Crimson Tide, I think is going to just chuck ball after ball to Ryan Williams, and he's going to single-handedly win this game for the Crimson Tide at Georgia.
He was the difference maker last year. One play after Georgia took the lead, he scored the touchdown that ended up being the difference maker for the Crimson Tide. So, yeah, Alabama, they do have a slight edge, honestly, with him at the wide receiver position. Georgia's still going to be favored in this game because they have the home field advantage, but we like the Crimson Tide to pull off this win.
After that, they're going to face Kentucky, and Kentucky did give them a little bit of a scare last year. Granted, that was at Kentucky, and Kentucky is losing probably their two best defensive players to the NFL draft in Maxwell Hairston and Deion Walker. And now Kentucky is bringing it back with a slightly better offense, bringing in Zach Calzada to take over the starting quarterback job after a really solid season at Incarnate Word. I think Kentucky maybe has similar upset potential, but given the fact that it is at Athens, I really don't think they're going to be able to pull it off this time. So Kentucky is not going to be much of a problem for Georgia here. They'll get back in the win column after that Alabama loss.
Next up, they're going on the road to face an Auburn team that a lot of people are very high on. Some have even said that the Tigers have a chance to win the SEC. I think that's pushing it a little bit, but don't get me wrong. Auburn is going to be a significantly improved team in 2025. I do think the Tigers have a chance to pull off this upset, but realistically, the Bulldogs with Kirby Smart as their head coach are going to have the edge here. We do like Georgia to win a close one, but still win. at Auburn.
Yeah, Jackson Arnold transferring to Auburn gives them a lot more potential to pull off some more upsets, but I do think they are a year or two out from really competing for the SEC title. After the Auburn game, they're back home facing Ole Miss. Ole Miss is an interesting team. I've seen a couple people really high on this team with Austin Simmons replacing Jackson Dart as their starting quarterback, but despite that being huge shoes to fill, they're losing a lot of other key players, both at the wide receiver position and on the D line. I don't think Ole Miss is going to be as good as some people think. I think they are going to slip a little bit in the SEC standings. I think Lane Kiffin is a great coach and is going to be able to lead a solid team that still has a lot of potential. I just don't think they're going to see as much success as they've seen the past few years, especially with this being a home game for Georgia. I think they're going to avenge their loss from last year and beat the Rebels.
With Austin Simmons, I think that Ole Miss is going to have a chance here. But with how young he is, I trust Gunnar Stockton a little bit more. Home field advantage, those really key factors here that will help Georgia move to 6-1 heading into their second bye week. And after that, facing the Florida Gators in Jacksonville, this was a really close game last year. And if DJ Lagway hadn't gotten injured, the Gators likely would have won. Now, hopefully, he'll be healthy. And I think that DJ Lagway has some serious potential to be a really, really good quarterback in 2025. Florida has a real chance to beat Georgia this season. It's going to be an incredibly, incredibly good game. However, we are going to go with the Bulldogs in a really close one over Florida.
Yeah, it's a coin toss for us here. I know we put percentage a little bit favoring Georgia, but I really think it will just come down to one mistake on either side for either team. In our case, I think DJ Lagway is maybe going to make one key mistake that this Georgia defense is going to be able to force him to make, and that's going to be the difference maker. But this is going to be an incredible game, and regardless of who wins or losses, this is still going to be something that you can put on a college football playoff resume as something to point to because both these teams are going to be so good next year. The same could not be said for Georgia's next opponent, that being Mississippi State, the inferior Bulldogs of the SEC. Not going to be a very successful team. They're going to be at the bottom of the standings once again. Blake Shapen back at quarterback after dealing with an injury last year, not going to help him too much. Maybe he is able to bring a little bit more offensive output than last season, but they're going to need a lot more help offensively and especially on the defense. And against this Georgia team, they're just going to get outclassed in every single way.
The next game going to be much tougher. Although they are at home, they're facing Arch Manning and the Texas Longhorns. Manning, one of the early Heisman favorites. And this Texas team, after making the college football playoff semifinals last year, is bringing back a considerable amount of talent. I think they're going to be a really good team once again in 2025. They are our preseason number one team. If you haven't checked out our spring top 25, make sure to go do that. Really, this is going to be a good game once again. Georgia, as we saw last year, got the better of Texas both times that they played. This is going to be a really good game once again. But against what seems like the logical decision, with Georgia winning both games last season and them having the home field advantage, we are going to go with the Longhorns in this matchup.
Yeah, I just think the offensive output Arch Manning brings to the table is going to be what takes Texas over the edge against Georgia. Quinn Ewers was very good last year, but he did not play his best games when they needed him to, and that was particularly evident against Georgia. And I think with Arch Manning, especially given how many games he'll have to this point in the season, I think he is going to be in great shape to dethrone the Bulldogs as the top team in the SEC. And it will be interesting to see if Georgia ends up being in the SEC championship game again and matches up against Texas once again. It'll be interesting to see how this game influences who ends up winning that game. But that is a discussion far in the future when we get to our projected standings based off of our predictions. After that loss to Texas, though, they will have a pretty easy game against Charlotte. They outclassed them in every single position imaginable, getting back in the win column here. And then we get to Georgia Tech. This game went to 8 overtimes last year. Georgia able to squeak out the win, but I think something's going to be different this year. Georgia Tech had opportunities to win the game last year, but squandered those chances. I think with Haynes King back, with the offensive production that they're bringing in or returning, including FIU receivers like Eric Rivers in from the transfer portal, a defense that is looking much better than last year and riding some of the hype after the big win against Miami last season and that Georgia game. I think Georgia Tech has a lot of potential to pull off one of the biggest upsets of the season by beating the Bulldogs to finish the season and, in my opinion, eliminate Georgia from playoff contention.
Yeah, this would be the Yellow Jackets' first win in this series since 2016. It's really a crazy prediction from us, but we are going to predict the Yellow Jackets to break their 7 game losing streak to the Bulldogs and win in Atlanta. Now, I do think an interesting note about this schedule for Georgia, they only have 3 true road games, and one of those is against Mississippi State. So this is a very favorable schedule for the Bulldogs. However, we are predicting them to go 9-3 because they are facing some solid teams, which is why their projection from our way too early predictions was 9.55 wins. We had them going 10-2 at that time. Since then, the prediction has changed to 9-3. Projection just dipped slightly to 9.5 wins, 5.8 and 2.2 in the SEC. However, the good sign for Georgia fans is that the floor is only 8-4 with 5 wins in the SEC. So really just dropping one more SEC game could be something like Ole Miss or Auburn. There's a few different possibilities. Maybe it could be Florida. We are pretty high on Florida this season. The ceiling, however, is 12-0. Obviously, undefeated is a possibility for this very talented Georgia team. However, we are going to go with 9-3 as our prediction for the Bulldogs in 2025. So, thank you guys for watching. Please make sure to like and subscribe, and we will see you in our next video.